started here tonight. So, on behalf of the Clay County Housing Taskforce and the City of Spencer, I want to welcome everyone who's here tonight. The Spencer citizens, our panelists, those offering their expertise, those people in the back of the room. I also want to extend my sympathy to all the residents and businesses who lost so much as a result of the flood. My thanks to Kevin Talam for moderating this event, as well as all the people involved in organizing the event. Yesterday, I had the privilege to meet with new teachers hired by the school district. And I told them, among other things, that they're going to be working and living in a truly great community. Although our city went through the worst flood in the history of Spencer, and perhaps the state, and thousands of our friends and neighbors were terribly impacted, we also saw the best of humanity. We saw first responders rescuing people, we saw neighbors helping neighbors, we saw people coming from out of state to help us. We saw churches and businesses opening their doors to those who were displaced. We saw businesses and nonprofits, foundations, helping people in need. And as I've said to a lot of people for the past 7 weeks, cities are good at providing basic services. There's no question about that, and I think we do a good job of that. But we don't have the internal resources to manage a disaster without the help of many other organizations, and many of those organizations are represented here tonight. So I want to thank everyone for your participation tonight, and I want to thank those people who have brought their resources to help those who might need their resources, and will be providing information and help to those of you who need it. And with that, I will turn the mic over to Kevin.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And once again, welcome to all of you. We appreciate your participation. And once again, it's very obvious that the flood has affected everybody in this room, and it really has affected the entire community. And so the goal of this forum tonight is we've collected a lot of questions from many of you that are here tonight, and also from others who could not be here. And the goal is all of the people that are serving on this panel are going to do the best to try and answer those questions and provide communication and some clarity as well. A couple of housekeeping notes here before we actually begin. I would like to ask if you do have a phone, mobile device, any electronics, if you would please silence those or turn them off during the forum so that there are no distractions and everybody can hear and pay attention so the best they can. Also, regarding our awareness that residents do have questions related to how the flood events unfolded and why things were done the way they were on that day, that information is going to be addressed at a different time. What we're going to do tonight is we are holding this forum specifically for recovery resources, so some of those questions are going to be addressed later on. Also, if any of you did fill out a form for a question to be asked, if it has not been collected, please hold up your hand with your paper and someone will be by to collect that, and we will get that in the queue to be asked here tonight. Panelists will begin answering questions submitted through the online survey, and anybody here tonight can submit if they do. If you want to, you can do that back at the table by the entrance. Any questions that did not get addressed tonight will be posted in an anonymous format on the city website or emailed to the residents later this week, depending on the subject matter. Residents can call or stop by City Hall during business hours for access to all resources that were presented tonight. I would like to introduce everybody who is serving on the panel up here on stage. Right here to my left is County Supervisor Alan Bachelet. Also, City of Spencer Mayor Steve Baumgartz, Deputy City Manager Kevin Robinson, Community Housing Initiative Representative Brittany Speaker, from the Spencer Chamber, Director Sharifa Jones, County Assessor Danica Welch, and Operations Supervisor for Black Hills Energy, Heath Richter. And also, if you notice in the back of the room, we do have resources available at tables. We have City of Spencer Planning Director Adam Severson, Clay County General Relief Director Rebecca Gokin. We also have local banks and realtors, FEMA individual assistance agents, Small Business Association, Care Connections, and the Spencer Chamber of Commerce afterwards. If you would like to have any personal one-on-one conversations with them, you may do so. And at this time, we will begin on the panel and start answering some questions. The first question is geared towards Black Hills Energy. When will I get Black Hills service restored?
I just want to say, maybe it's on now. There it goes. I just want to say thank you to everybody coming out tonight, first off. It's a challenging time for all of us. Black Hills Energy is here to support you with your natural gas needs, and we're doing everything we can to help. We had a plan when it started. It's changed multiple times, but where we're at right now in terms of getting people natural gas is we have natural gas throughout the entire community. So if you have natural gas previously to the flood, what we ask is that you have a working natural gas appliance, whether that be a range, a dryer, water heater, or furnace. Once you have one of those items and your home is clean and safe to enter, all you have to do is just come out and give us a call on our call center, and they'll arrange a time for us to come out. When the initial response occurred, we had over 20 to 40 people here at a time. We have since released those individuals back to their communities from Arkansas all the way to Colorado. And so currently, we have just our local technicians providing this service. So it may be a little bit slower, but we are doing our best to try and get every turn on that's called in within 48 hours. So again, we need a working gas appliance so that we can test our lines against it. And then from there, you can have a plumber or whoever finish the rest of the relighting of the appliances.
All right, thank you very much, Heath. Our next question is a pretty popular question that we get a lot, and we're going to direct this to Sharika Jones at the Spencer Chamber. How is the money dispersed to those of us affected by the flood who have suffered losses? FEMA helped some, but we did lose a lot. Do the people of Spencer get some of the money donated?
Yes, great question. The answer is yes. Residents, and actually we've opened up for Clay County as well, so all of Clay County residents who are affected can apply for our funds. At this time, it's just a rolling application. There's no deadline. We are going to give out funds as long as we have funds. I did bring some applications this evening, so they're on the back table. The application is also available on our website, and we're in the process of actually getting that translated into Spanish as well. So our grant review committee will be meeting tomorrow night and looking at all of the resident and business applications. We have criteria set forth, and if we need to, set forth any other criteria or prioritize in terms of buckets, I would say. And then our plan is that we will get checks ready. We will call each person to make sure if you would like it mailed or would you like to pick it up as well, because we understand that some people may be included an alternative address, others maybe, and I wasn't thinking about it until after the fact that we might need to have an alternative address. Additionally, we want to make sure that people are able to get it as quickly as possible. So yes, businesses and residents will start receiving funds. Like I said, we meet tomorrow night.
Okay, Sharika, the next two questions I think we'll direct towards you as well. Talk a little bit about, is there any financial help in the near future for businesses? And I'm seeing that we do have some business owners who are here tonight. Can you give an update on that?
Absolutely, and I'll talk just a little bit through our grant application. So we do have it set up for individuals, for residents as well as businesses. Again, this is for residents and businesses in Clay County. What we are asking is that obviously the residential individuals that they have applied to FEMA. And if you also apply to SBA, we know that not everyone has, but if you have, to get us that information. For businesses, the same thing. Businesses actually need to apply to FEMA to get a case number, and then ultimately their only funding source is through SBA at this point, and then obviously your local lenders as well. And so ultimately, what we are doing is, again, at this time, the maximum for a resident is $500, and the maximum for a business is $1,500. We will give out money as much as we can in a rolling timeline again. And so we will be reviewing applications tomorrow evening from residents as well as from businesses as well. And we'll follow the same protocol. Most of the businesses we know a little bit more about as far as if they're able to get mail at their address, but we have a very, I would say we have a very close relationship with most of the businesses in Spencer. If we did it prior to the disaster, we certainly do now. And so we'll also mail, or, heck, we could probably do a drop off for some of the businesses as well, but ideally that they're coming to pick it up as well. So additionally, to answer that question, there is that financial assistance for businesses. They need to go through FEMA and then to SBA, and then we are also an option, and we are also working on other options as well to help businesses, because many have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory, technology, many of the same things, furnaces, drywall, and so we are in conversations, I would say, on a daily basis with other partners to provide additional funding for businesses.
Yeah, I would like to add a little bit to that as well. I think Sharif has explained what the Chamber's responsibility or what they have taken on with regard to the foundation. But with regard to aid for businesses, sometimes, and I see our FEMA friends are in the back, and I'm not going to say anything negative about FEMA, although sometimes it's not everybody's favorite four-letter word that we have. But on the other hand, sometimes it is. FEMA has done a great job in terms of having boots on the ground almost immediately from the time the flood occurred in that first week. Now, with regard to businesses, however, FEMA doesn't actually have a lot of aid for businesses, and the Small Business Administration has loans available to businesses, but not in the form of grants, and really the state doesn't either. But that said, Deputy City Manager Robinson and I have talked a little bit about aid to businesses over the last, week, 2 weeks, something like that. And so I'm going to pass the mic over to Kevin, and he's going to talk a little bit about perhaps, what some possibilities might be.
Thank you, Mayor. I see the question came in from Weezy. Is Weezy here? Darren here? I didn't see him. He's making Weezers. So here's where we're at, and here's where we're going. So things that you learn in a disaster. So the first thing to understand on the path before us, number one, it's a long path. And number two, every disaster professional that I have talked to, so these are people who are either career people with FEMA or Homeland Security in the state of Iowa, or response organizations. So the level at which our community was hit is unprecedented in the state of Iowa. So for perspective, when Cedar Rapids had their big flood, I believe it was in 2012, they had a similar number of houses impacted, but that was about 3% of their population. We had 75% of our population impacted, and over a third or so were severely or dramatically impacted, so a combination of personal and business. So the relevance of that, as you begin the journey to manage through a disaster of this size, you start to understand that there are certain programs and certain funding mechanisms that are turned on or off based on the level of disaster that happens in your community. So what that means is there are not a lot of custom programs available. So as you found out, if you're a rental property owner, there's not a lot of programs, hardly any other than an SBA loan, that are available to you for support, grants, that nature. If you are a business owner, you've also found out there's not a tremendous amount of state and federal programs available for immediate assistance as it relates to that. So I've been working with Debbie Durham, who is the Iowa Department of Economic Development. They've changed the acronyms now. Iowa Economic Development Authority, I believe, is the current name for that. So how disaster funding works on the custom end of it is there's what's called community development block grants, and there's a division of those called disaster relief. So the acronym is CDBG/DR. So right now, the state of Iowa DR fund is at a zero balance, and the federal DR fund is at a zero balance. So how do they get funded? They get funded in the next federal session that starts. So Representative Feenstra is who we'll be talking to next, and I would encourage you to reach out to Representative Feenstra as well. So he is the key to moving forward to get that filled. Once they fill that at the federal level, then they'll fill the state level. Once they fill the state level fund, then they will contact us, and we will try to write some custom programs to help our community move forward with relief. I want to be clear, the size of the disaster that occurred, the reality is there will probably not be the financial programs and resources to make people whole. So to return their financial status in their businesses and their personal lives to June 21st. So what we're going to try to do is close that gap as much as possible through these different funding mechanisms. The Iowa Flood Mitigation Board also has a fund. That fund is at a zero balance. That's funded laterally within the state. So we're going to be asking the state for funding in that as well. And the timelines that you see in communities that have been hit significantly, the funding and rebuilding process for that is typically not on the same timeline that you all in your personal lives and business lives are trying to make decisions today. So we're doing what we can to get those buckets filled. We do have some money available through our Reserve Economic Development Fund that we're going to meet with the council and work with to try to get some assistance out to business owners in the next, hopefully 10 days. We have to do some council action on that, but that's where we're at. I want you to know that we're working hard on it. There is not a tremendous amount of programs as it relates to businesses and rental property owners. We understand the severity of it. We're working towards solutions, and please reach out to us. For me, when I communicate to the state and federal levels, the more data I have, the more stories I have, the more I can understand your journey, the better we can custom make our programs. So please reach out.
And I just want to, on behalf of the supervisors of the unincorporated parts of the county, we need to just point out that the same sort of services and disaster assistance can be available to folks that are individually affected, or perhaps in businesses, although we're not aware of any businesses in the unincorporated areas. But all the same things tonight we're focused here mostly on Spencer. But for as far as the rest of the county is concerned, many, if not most, of these assistance approaches are also available to people in unincorporated areas. So we don't want you to think you're being left out. Please, contact any of the county officials. Board supervisors are all here tonight, and many of the other elected officials are here from the county also. So please don't think the 4,000 people living outside of the incorporated areas are being overlooked, because they're not. And we just want to highlight that. So I know tonight's going to focus on Spencer, but we don't want to overlook that.
All right, thank you. Touching on this a little bit, but a specific question about assistance for landlords for rehabilitation. Is there anything that landlords can do, sources they can go to for help and financial help?
Yeah, so I can take that. And what I want to mention too is, before the flood, we had these partnerships, many partnerships, and they've been strengthened. So Terry Bachelet, she is the executive director for the Clay County Community Foundation. So that is a separate organization, and they are able to give grants to government entities as well as nonprofits. So 501c3 organizations primarily. So as an example, they could give money to Upper Des Moines Opportunity. The other piece of that, the Spencer Chamber Foundation, we can give funds to businesses and individuals. So really between the Clay County Community Foundation and the Spencer Chamber Foundation, we know that we are getting all of the bases covered. And then therefore, then also working with the school foundation and also Love Takes Root, who are then also working with other organizations to address things like school supplies, just needs that students are gonna have, beds, things like that. So with that question, yes, landlords can apply to the Chamber Foundation Relief Fund. What we have set up currently is that they, and also in the eyes of FEMA and also SBA, or the Small Business Administration, they are a business. A landlord is a business. So while they can't receive funds through FEMA as a landlord, they still need to get a case. They can receive funds through the Small Business Administration. With that in mind, we recognize that they are a business. We also recognize the importance of good rental stock that we have here in Spencer and in Clay County. Therefore, landlords can apply for that $1,500. What we have set currently is that if they have 9 properties, let's say, that they at this time only put in an application for one of their properties, and if we can give out more to that landlord for additional properties, we will. We also, and I've had a couple of conversations with a few of our landlords, also to encourage their tenants to also apply, so that the landlord could get $1,500 for a house. Their tenant could also get up to $500 for that house, because we all know what was stored in basements, from clothing to a washer and dryer, things that a tenant likely needs to be able to provide on their own. But a landlord is probably covering a water heater and a furnace, things like that. And if any of the landlords do have questions about that, they can certainly reach out to me as well. And likewise, a tenant. So again, we do have applications here tonight. If I don't have enough, we will happily print off more applications. We will help walk anyone through that application, and it is available on our website as well.
So moving forward, the opportunities we're looking at for rental property owners, we're gathering the data. So we believe about 60% of the rental stock was impacted in the community. We believe that's about 820 units. We calculate that out, if you factor that between 2 and 2.5 people per unit, that's somewhere between 1,200 and 1,800 people impacted. Some units were, first floor hit, some were completely taken offline. So we're going to push for a special aid package from the state and the federal government as well. This is where some of the gamesmanship of how do we rebuild our community. The current programs don't exist, but I'm not going to stop pushing for custom programs. So we're going to work with our state legislature and the federal government to try to get some type of specialized funding package, because the level was so dramatic here, and the rental housing serves many different socioeconomic levels, many different life stage levels. It's critical to our community, so we have to address that. If you do have a property, whether it's a residence or a rental unit, that was impacted to the point where you would like to demo that property and either sell the lot or demo the property and rebuild, it does not have to be in the floodplain. This can be out of the floodplain. The Iowa Department of Homeland Security has a program that they'll pay for the demolition of that house. So the process is we have to, and it can be, I believe it can be a multifamily unit as well. Don't quote me on that, but I believe we can get that done. So the process for that is we have to condemn that property as a city. Normally that's a negative term. In this case, hopefully it's a positive if you want your property to come down. So the ownership does not change of that property. So the process is we condemn it. We can condemn it for health and safety reasons. We can condemn it for structural reasons. We can condemn it for financial reasons. The current owner does not have the ability to rehab the property. It will then become a health and safety hazard. So we do that through our normal process. We submit that right up to the state of Iowa. They send that to the federal government. The federal government approves it. And then within 60 to 90 days, that property will be demoed. That program pays for the demolition of the residential portion of the property, not for garages or accessory buildings or things of that nature, but I believe we can figure out a way, hopefully, to address that. But anyway, that program is available, and if you'd like to learn more about that or get on that list, we have a handful of properties right now that are interested. Please call City Hall, and ask for me or come see me afterwards, and we'll get you on the list.
The next question is, when is the soonest we can get into a group trailer setting? We've been starting to see the mobile trailers go up in different areas of the city and even the county for temporary housing. When is the soonest that we can get into that setting?
We've already been filling the trailers back here at the fairgrounds, and they are still taking applications. We currently have 414 applications for all the disaster areas, and 165 Clay County residents have applied. And right now, we are also looking at 8 private dwellings. FEMA does have some restrictions for some testing that they have to do with the trailers in order to put the RV in your driveway, but people are more than encouraged to apply to live in those.
There will also be a winter program for folks who need alternative housing, temporary housing through the winter. So FEMA is looking at build-out sites right now. We showed them 7 different properties. Let's see, 4 were public, 3 were private. So there's 352 approved FEMA cases for winter housing. The state program you have to apply for, and then they review that, and they'll tell you if you're in. On the FEMA side, you're automatically in, they've already reviewed your case. So if they have not been in contact with you, they will be in contact with you. And those should arrive here the end of September, early October. So the build out has to be cement pads, electric, water, sewer, and that program, again, you should see start rolling here middle of fall. If you have any questions, again, contact us at City Hall or talk to the FEMA folks in the back.
Also, just to clarify too, the people who are occupying the RVs get to stay there through the fair. The fair has been an incredible partner through this whole situation, and so no one's going to have to move out because of the fair.
Our next question is, why has the city not bought back the properties at 110% of the assessed value so FEMA can kick in their part?
Good question. So the formulation for property mitigation buyout, that's the program. So there's 2 levels to this. So the formula is FEMA pays 75%, the state of Iowa pays 10%, the local government pays 15%. So how much money is available for property mitigation? You all filed, I assume everybody here, filed an IA FEMA case, individual assistance. So if your property was damaged, you filled out a case and went through that process. The governments also do that. That's called public assistance, PA. So how the mitigation program works is our numbers are due to the state of Iowa, as is every community, within 6 months after the disaster. So 25% of the total PA dollars applied to FEMA in the state of Iowa are going to be available for residential mitigation. How that works is FEMA will give that amount of money to the state of Iowa. The state of Iowa then determines how much each community receives for property mitigation projects. What our role in that is to assemble addresses to then funnel up to the state so they can determine the level that we will be funded at for property mitigation. That's the first layer. The second layer is what happens to a property that gets mitigated. So in this program, that property goes offline, meaning the city of Spencer becomes the deed holder, and there can never be a residential unit put back on that property. The target for acquisition of properties is floodplain properties. If you're out of the floodplain, there's a very low likelihood through this program that your property would be mitigated. If you're in the floodplain, it depends where you're at, if your property will get mitigated. Now, this is on the FEMA side. So what I want to be clear about is, your house might be in the floodplain, you might want it purchased due to various reasons. It might not make sense under this program that that property goes offline, meaning if it's in the middle of a neighborhood and all of a sudden there's a bare, lot, every housing unit we take offline in the community, we have to put one back on just to remain at the level that we were before the disaster. So what we're working on for those folks that might be in that scenario where the federal program doesn't make sense, we still want to see a housing unit on that lot. It can still be viable in the future. We're trying to figure out a localized mitigation program for that with various different funding mechanisms. But I just want everybody to understand, you might be in a position where you want your house purchased and mitigated, and it might not be in the area that's targeted for mitigation. So we don't have those maps completed yet, and that map completed yet. What I would encourage you to do is if you would like your property purchased, please contact me at City Hall. We can get you on a list. We'll get it on the map. We'll submit it to the state of Iowa, and then we'll move forward from there. So when does the money come in through that program? So through the mitigation program, we can open that lever 6 months post-disaster. So that's when we become eligible for the program. The buyouts don't occur until 36 months after that 6 month. So you're 3.5 years post-disaster when money is exchanged for properties. Then the question we get asked is, well, what if I don't own the property at that time, or do I have to keep the property, or is it just going to sit and rot? Like what happens to that property? So ownership at the time of acquisition does not have to be the same as it is the day that the flood happened. So the buyout goes to the property owner at the time of acquisition. If that makes sense. Again, there's a lot of layers to it. If you have questions on how that program works and the timing of it, I'm happy to have individual conversations with you.
The next question, is there an active database of the number of rentals that are available in Spencer for people that still might be looking for housing right now? Is there a place to go to find that?
That's a great question. Our housing team, which is made up of myself, Jen Morley, Rebecca Gogan, Cares Connection, Historial, and different service groups, right away during the flood, we had about 30 people to call around Northwest Iowa, across the state, identifying different vacancies that are in the area. We then made a Google Doc and detailed them out as to senior properties, multifamily properties, income limits, all of that. And we were able to connect people who reached out that needed displacement to the proper units. Unfortunately, right now, Spencer's pretty low on vacancies. We've had amazing landlords reach out to the city and to us with whatever they have open, and we're able to kind of piece that puzzle together and put people in where they qualify and would work out. So right now, we don't really have a database for available units just because we do have private landlords and we have public landlords. But we've been working really closely with the HUD, with Angie Crange and Northwest Iowa Regional Housing Authority, and we're also working with Okoboji with the Airbnbs. So families who are working on their home, who may not want to live in an RV, we've been able to connect them with Airbnbs up in Okoboji, and they've been able to rent those out until next May, when hopefully their home has been repaired.
I forgot to answer the value question. So if your property gets purchased, so it's the fair market value, not the assessed value. It's the fair market value on June 21st before the disaster hit. So let's say you demo your house, it's a blank lot, you continue ownership of that, 3.5 years down the road it gets mitigated. What's the value of that? The value is whatever the value was June 21st. So it doesn't have to look like it did then. You can take the structure down. That's how the valuation is occurring. Every community uses a little different formula. We have not officially set our formula yet. Cedar Rapids actually did the assessed value 7% over. So they did 107% of the assessed value. But the FEMA documents read they encourage you to use a fair market value calculation done by either realtors or comps or different estimates.
The next question I think we all would like to know, it's a sensitive question. How many people have moved away from Spencer, and what are we doing to prevent residents from relocating?
I'll hog the mic here. So the national average, they tell us, is 10 to 12%. They call it flood flight. So after a disaster of our size, that's the national average. Now, most of those disasters happen in the South, and people in the South in a more temperate climate tend to be a little more transient, and they move around a little more. When I asked Cedar Rapids how many they lost in their flood, they thought it was less than 1%. Now, it's a little bit apples to oranges, so they've got like 400,000 people in a 50-mile radius down there, so somebody could live with somebody else while they were rebuilding their life and still be able to keep the same job, be in the same community, that type of thing. Demographically, in the state, and I guess geographically, we're different, right? We're more isolated is typically the term you will hear. I'd like to say remote. Our community is just, Northwest Iowa is built a little differently, right? So we don't have a good answer for that right now. The first delta variable is probably going to be school enrollment. So what is your school enrollment on the count date? Then we'll have a better idea with that. So the goal is to have nobody leave. So we've been working hard to try to do that, getting temporary housing in place. Probably sounds simple to get, the RVs here. There's a lot of red tape to jump through to do that, but I don't have a good answer for you as to how many have left. We hope nobody, and not the silver lining, but a variable that I have heard from communities who have gone through this is there's a bounce back. So there's an initial, number that will move their life somewhere else. And then after the community stabilizes, figures out some housing things, starts to rebuild itself, a lot of times in the Midwest will come back to that community if they have a connection there, family there, or enjoyed their time here. So the time will tell, I guess. I don't have a good number for you today.
How many houses and apartments have been condemned at this point in time?
Zero? Here's the confusing part. I'll try this very quick. So when it comes to either X's on houses or X's with circles or placards, so there's green, yellow, red placards. Each one of those were put in place for different reasons. So most of the orange single X's that you see, especially on the south side of town, those were during boat rescues. So the protocol there was when you rescue somebody from a house, put an X on the house so that we don't go back to that house and waste time trying to get people safe. The second is the X's with the circles that were put on houses that had collapsed foundations. So that was not a condemnation process, that was for emergency response personnel, so that if they responded to a house, they wanted people to understand when they went back to their house that their structure was compromised before they entered. We could have done a better job as a city, not making them so big, not putting them on siding doors. We've had many internal conversations about that. We're trying to figure out a good way to get them off. I've heard, nail polish or paint thinner, but it was not a good situation that occurred, right? And it happened to be oil-based paint that they grabbed instead of latex paint, it's in the heat of the moment. Those weren't condemnations, those were just unsafe to enter. So we are a community in what's called the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, and that's federally mandated. We don't have a choice. Well, we do have a choice. We could not participate in that program, and then nobody in town can get flood insurance, which usually means if you're in the floodplain, you need a mortgage, you gotta have flood insurance, right? So in 1981, the community was put into the NFIP program. The city of Spencer manages that federal program. So you'll get letters with the city letterhead, you'll talk to city staff regarding your property in the floodplain. There's 152 100-year, what they call it, .1 now, floodplain properties. So the federal government has different rules for properties in those areas. Many of those properties were built prior to 1981, prior to these rules existing. And These rules can get somewhat complex, but how it works, basically, if you're in the 100-year floodplain, the federal government wants, during the journey of that property, one of two things. They want that property either mitigated, gone, or they want that property out of the floodplain, brought up out of the floodplain. That's a complex thing. There's ways to do it. It's harder to retro adjust properties than it is for new construction. There's different designs and things like that that are floodplain compliant. But that is where we're at. So on condemnation, there is no the placards. So part of the NFIP rules state within a specified time window after a declared national disaster. So as soon as the president declared us a national disaster, that triggers different things in the community because of the NFIP rules. So one of those is what's called a rapid structural assessment. So we have X number of days to provide the federal government in the database software how many structures are compromised. So we had an outside firm, the same firm that did Rock Valley, came up here, the AIA Architect Institutes of America, I believe. Is that right, Adam?
American Institutes of Architecture.
American Institutes of Architecture. Okay. The other thing you find out with disasters is there's more acronyms than I thought were humanly possible to exist. In fact, the FEMA book actually has a glossary of just acronyms. But so we had to have, within so many days, all of the structures rapidly assessed. And that's why those placards are on there. Now, the language on the placards isn't great. That's why there's not a city logo on the placard. It doesn't mean it's condemned. That was part of the rapid assessment. If you have that on your property, you can take them off. We have all the data that's been submitted. That's why those things happen. So as of today, no property has been condemned.
How can you make a substantially damaged split-level house that is in a 100-year flood zone comply with the floodplain management requirements?
Yeah, I'm sorry to have to answer all these. So the very simple version is, it's called Adam, is the proper term first floor living? Yeah, first floor living, so split level. Split level designs by nature are designed, when you go down, that's part of your living quarters, right? That's usually where every bedroom but the master bedroom is. The way the floodplain program works is, if, let's say basement, or let's say lower level. If your lower level is storage and not finished for living, that's not considered your first floor. Your first floor is the elevation of your first floor for living. So, many ways to do it. It just has to be a foot above, this is Iowa law, by the way. It has to be a foot above BFE, which is base floodplain elevation. So you either have to bring the property up or, well, you have to bring the property up. There's different ways to do that. But the key is your first living floor has to be a foot above. What triggers that, you might ask? So two different, well, either new construction is the easiest answer, it's gotta be above. That's why you might see like Thrifty Way, Advanced Auto Parts, businesses on the south end of town are elevated up so high, that's why. Because they didn't comply with the NFIP or the floodplain. Properties that are retro lifted, block, there's designs on stilts, that you can put a garage under your house. You can do a lot of different things to get it up out. So where we'll face a challenge as a community is there's two parts of this 50% threshold, and this is where it can get confusing. So after a disaster happens, you have what's called the initial damage assessment. So this is different than the placards. This is what is the value of damage to the structure of your home. Not how much is it going to cost to fix your home. What is the damage to the structure of your home? So if you're under 50% of your market value, you don't have to raise your house on that initial assessment. Was there 3, Adam? 3 out of the 152, the initial assessment were above 50%. So what that means is all but 3 can stay where they're at, not a problem. The next part is a battle that I lost with FEMA. So that's called the substantial improvement threshold. Usually you would hear this with remodels or expansions of homes, or historically in our community, that's when this would come into effect. Because many basements were gutted, the level of disaster was so severe, the way the substantial improvement formula works is if you reinvest 51% or more of the fair market value back into your home, you have to be a foot above the base flood elevation. Okay, that's fine, Kevin. What if I say pound sand? I'm not gonna do it. All right? You can do that, that's fine. So what happens? So what happens is you become, not you, the property becomes non-compliant. So it gets registered as a non-compliant property. And then that property itself cannot carry flood insurance. So, if you're a cash buyer, contract buyer, if you don't have to worry about a mortgage, probably not a huge thing. If you are in a situation, or the next buyer's in a situation where they need flood insurance, when they go to do the review on the property, it'll be listed as non-compliant. And again, that's not a City of Spencer code, that's not our rule, that we administer the NFIP program. And if you have further questions or want to visit about it, we're happy to visit about it. So that's how that works.
If you've just joined us here in the last 45 minutes, if you do have a question that you would like to be presented to the panel, you can do so. There's a table right back here at the entrance where you came in. You can submit that there, and they will then bring that up here. And if we have time before 8 o'clock, we'll do our best to answer that question. Next on the list, how and when will people find out if their address is going on the list for demolition?
So demolition's an opt-in. So if you would like your property demoed, please come see us. If properties do get to the point, let's for simplicity's sake, let's call them walk-away properties for whatever reason. Somebody has abandoned their property, left it. That will follow our normal process, non-flood related. If it becomes a health and safety hazard issue, we analyze it, determine if it needs to come down, and then we deal with it how we normally do it outside of the flood. The demo program through FEMA support from the state of Iowa is not limited to the floodplain. So if you have an impacted property outside the floodplain and you would like to see it demoed, please contact me at City Hall, and we will get you on the list and get you into that program.
Okay, so on the same lines of the FEMA demolition program, a two-part question. Is the city working with the Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management to initiate the program for residents? And in the demolition program, does it only pay for demolition, or does it include money for all or a fraction of the value of the structure pre-flood, plus the cost of demolition?
So the answer to the first question is yes. So Terry and Renee are the two people who run that department, run that portion of Homeland Security. Homeland Security administers, or you could say, is the fiscal agent and recording part of the state government that handles this program. So yes, we've been in contact with them. Yes, we are signed up with them. Yes, we are beginning the process to start to be able to have homeowners demo their homes. And the second part is on valuation. So the valuation on a demo is not, there is no valuation. So the upside to a demo in the program is you don't lose ownership of the property. And it's not exclusive to participate in the mitigation program. So it is possible that I visited with a family 2 days ago that are in this situation. So they are in an area where it's going to make sense to mitigate. That house is no longer inhabitable, they want it to come down. So they'll participate on the demo program, and then in 3.5 years, they'll be on the mitigation list, and then the property will be purchased. Might not be that way for every property, just in that particular case, that does make sense for them and that property. So, is there anything else in that question?
No, does the demolition program only pay for demolition, or does it include money for all or a fraction the value of the structure pre-flood plus the cost of demolition?
So you have three basic costs for demolition. You have the structure coming down, you have the backfill, and you have the landfill cost. I'm still getting clarification from the state. I believe the answer is no, but I'm getting clarification. I don't believe it pays for backfill, and I don't believe it pays for landfill fees. It does pay for the demolition itself, except outside the living area, so it wouldn't pay for the garage. And they will take the 2 foot down of the foundation. It won't take the entire foundation out. So, but I'll get clarification on the backfill and the landfill.
Okay, next question. We were told if we receive grant money and haven't purchased $50,000 in receipts from the SBA loan money, we would be required to pay back the grant money. We are still getting quotes for structural damage done to our basement and home. If we don't spend $50,000 and we are offered or given grant money, we were told we would need to pay it back to the SBA. Is this correct?
I think that, yeah, I think that that's a question that might be beyond our pay grade at this point, but I think that there might be some folks in the back of the room, so if you're the one who asked that question, you can talk to, I believe it's Garth, isn't it, right? Back here in the back, and he'll be able to answer that question for you.
And there might be some confusion in the question. It might not be an SBA question. It could be. It could be the state of Iowa $50,000 homeowner grant program, and there's stipulations that come with that. I'm not an expert in that. I don't know if anybody else is here.
If you have any questions regarding the 50,000 Iowa state grant, you can ask me and I can ask our state affiliate for those answers for you.
Yeah, and I just want to respond a little bit to the $50,000 state program, forgivable loan program. I believe that's what you're referring to, Ms. Britton. A couple of weeks ago, I think it was, the state contacted us because Governor Reynolds, when she was here, one of her visits, I don't know if it was the second or the third visit, rolled out the $50,000 forgivable loan program for home rehab. There was $6.2 million that was allocated by the state through the Iowa Finance Authority. There were 2 weeks ago, maybe perhaps 3 weeks ago, there were 256 applications for that particular program. 148 of those were from Spencer. So, you know, if you just do the math, obviously there wasn't enough in that program to accommodate everybody who applied. And I'm not sure exactly how the state allocated the funding on those. One of the things that I did when I found out that there were 256 applications, only $6.2 million, I contacted the governor's office to see if, and also Representative Jones, and I don't know if Megan is here tonight, to see if there was anything that the state could do to allocate more money into that program, because obviously there was a tremendous need seen for that particular program. And in talking with Representative Jones, she was under the impression that it would probably not be able to be funded by the governor or the governor's office, the Iowa Finance Authority, at this time before the legislature goes back into session in January. But I think that Representative Jones and our other state representative and our state senators who represent this area will be working hard to come up with an aid package, not just for Clay County and Spencer, but for all of the areas that are affected, because there is quite a need out there, obviously.
One resident is wanting to know, do you need a permit? Is a permit required before you make repairs to your home? If so, what repairs require permits, and how do we obtain them? Is that the responsibility of the homeowner, or is it the responsibility of the contractor?
So the expert is in the back. Adam, you want to raise your hand? So Adam's our planning director. Adam Severson. So if I get this wrong, correct me. So if you're in the floodplain, you do need a floodplain permit. So it's not a building, it's not a City of Spencer building permit, even though you can get it from City Hall, it's our logo on it. That's floodplain related. If
For
you-
a man-made change.
Yeah, permanent or man-made changes.
Yeah.
So if you're outside the floodplain, you don't need, if you're redoing your basement, things like that, then you do not need a permit, correct?
Correct, if it's a like material repair.
Yeah. And if you need electrical work done or plumbing rerun, those do require permits?
I would say that's more of a case-by-case scenario.
Case by case basis, depending on the extent of the.
Yep, so just contact City Hall for those.
Yeah, talk to Adam if you have questions specifically on it, and come back.
Another good question, moving forward, is the city going to implement an annual cleanup day to prevent all the trash from building up in people's homes?
I was waiting for a trash question. Actually, this is a very good question. And at our last goal-setting session, this was actually brought up. And there is quite a bit of, I would say, momentum on the city council to do this. I know that a lot of communities have a city cleanup day. Now, we've had a city cleanup day in the spring, but that's basically just in public areas, parks, and that sort of thing. But this is beyond that and going for people cleaning out their basements, cleaning out their homes, and so forth. So this is a good question because we can revisit this again. And I know that Public Works Director Mark White was looking into this and seeing how this could be affected. So I think that what we would probably have to do is we would probably have to do it in quadrants within the city or something. There would have to be a program, obviously, because I don't believe that our solid waste people could get everything picked up just in their regular runs for solid waste. But this is a program that we will look into. I think there's some interest in it in the community, obviously, and there's interest on the city council to do this. So we will definitely be looking at it.
And I just mentioned that you didn't see it because out in the unincorporated areas, we had targeted support where we went to pick up trash and help the people that were outside of the city limits. And we've had the same kind of conversations amongst supervisors about how we might, and I know it's been done in the past. Some of the supervisors have gone longer than I have. So that's also an initiative that was well received, and I think that's something we're talking about too.
All right, this next question, I will read it as it was submitted to us. And it goes like this. What happens to the temporary housing when it's no longer needed? Will it turn into a dilapidated trailer court? What happens to the 1% of people living in the temporary housing that have no incentive to seek permanent housing?
So will it turn into a dilapidated trailer court? So the answer is no. So the two programs, the state program, which is what you see at the fairgrounds, and then you'll see the FEMA program, the 2-3 bedroom winter rated housing. So when the state program is done late fall, probably, the state of Iowa will take all those trailers back. And then what happens to those trailers? So all these trailers are brand new. They were all requisitioned by the state through an RV dealer. When the program is done, they will be taken back by the state, and then they will be auctioned off on a state auction. On the FEMA side, all the FEMA trailers coming in are brand new. They're not cleaned out, rehab, been once used. They're brand new trailers. And the same thing will happen with that. If a FEMA trailer is at the end of life for the resident who's in it, the federal government will come, take that trailer away, and sell it at a federal auction.
As for the people living in the temporary housing, the state has contracted with a company called Tetra Tech, and they have case management. They have actually hired people from our community to do case management. I was really, really impressed with this company. They're helping everyone that are in the RVs. They need to have plans to get out. Either if that's repairing their home, if that's trying to get them into another rental. Our housing team is working with them. Rebecca Gogan with General Release has done a phenomenal job doing case management with these people that are in the RVs, just to see what needs they have to get them placed permanently. And so between Tetra Tech's, I can't ever say that 3 times in a row, case management team and our housing team, the residents have to make they have to make a drive. They have to be making progress in order to get back to their home or to get a new home. I strongly believe after we made huge strides right away when the flood happened by placing, I would say, over 100 people into their new rentals, that we will not have a problem. I'm hoping that what Tetra Tech has done is give homeowners time to get their home ready to live back in.
The next question has been a topic of conversation with a lot of people. And the question is from this resident: why do we need a free-to-use splash pad when our pool needs extensive maintenance? Are there not bigger issues we have right now?
That's a very good question. I think at this particular time, and I think that the city council had a committee of the whole, we did have a committee of the whole meeting about a week ago or so, where we talked about the proposed bond referendum with regard to the improvements at the aquatic center and the proposed new campground. It was decided at that meeting that we would push the pause button with regard to everything that's going on right now with regard to the aquatic center and with regard to the campground. Those are still 2 big issues. We obviously have to address the campground issue. Our present campground was totally obliterated basically as a result of the flood. And the aquatic center had was impacted severely as well. So, but that doesn't mean that we are not going to revisit that. With regard to the splash pad, it was the council thinking at that time that we have been looking at building a splash pad for probably 10 to 15 years, something like that, kind of kicking the can down the road with regard to the splash pad, and that we didn't want to do that at this time. Yes, we realize that there are other needs in the community. We understand that, but we think that we can do that. Plus, I think we can provide for those other needs as well. That doesn't necessarily mean that we can't have fundraising campaigns and things like that to offset some of the costs for the splash pad in terms of the city providing just a bond for it. So there are some things that I think that we'll be talking about here with regard to that in the future.
Another question: what happens to the people that signed the waiver to get their electricity back on when they sell their property in the future? Will there be a record of that waiver that would go with the sale?
So what happens to the people? I mean, nothing happens to the people. What happens to the waiver? What happens to the disclaimer on the property? So let's touch first on the waiver itself. So when an inspection happens, so there's electric work done in a house. Doesn't matter flood or not flood. Let's just say electric work's being done in a house. So the master electrician, who is registered with the city as a certified electrician, notifies the city planning department there's an inspection that needs to occur on property XYZ. So we send out the electrical inspector from city staff that basically doesn't double check. I would say they just check to make sure everything, all the work is up to code. So it's for safety reasons. So we use the NEC code, it's national code. So what happened when so many properties went offline, to have a master electrician do the work, call City Hall gets dispatched out, looks fine, then we notify SMU. The timeline that we analyzed, it was gonna take a long time to get houses back on. Rarely does something happen where the electrician didn't do it correctly. So in an effort to speed the process for people to get their homes re-energized, we did waivers. And the waiver is the homeowner signing it off, saying that they acknowledge that the city has not come out to double check the work and inspect the work of the electrician. So what does that do? Well, it does a couple things. Number one, we move like all the chips in on the validity of the electricians to do good work. They're gonna do good work. And 99% of them do great work. Now and again, somebody might be in a hurry or cut a corner or forget something, or it's rare. We do have that list of waivers. The goal is when the workload slows down to be able to go back to those residences and just double check everything was okay. It looks good. So what are the risks of the waiver program that we did? So when we made that decision, we weighed out the pain and discomfort of people not being able to get their power back on versus taking the risk of accelerating the re-energizations. So that's what we did. If the homeowner was comfortable with us not coming checking on it, they signed the waiver, turned it in, and we called SMU, go re-energize the house. That waiver is not recorded anywhere on the deed or, goes with the property or anything like that. We do have the list. Like I said, the intent is to go back and double check the work to make sure everything's safe. The goal of the program is safety. It's not to be intrusive. Although a lot of times those are the complaints that we get. But the goal is the safety of the house. So sometimes depends on your homeowner's policy. Sometimes homeowner insurance underwriters are very thorough, and they want to see that documentation, or they want to double check it's been inspected or reinstalled. We anticipate probably more of that in this community, as providers know that this community went through what we went through. But yes, we do have a record, and the goal is to make sure everybody is safe and compliant with the electricity.
Somebody else submitted a question that we might not be thinking about at this very moment, but in another 3 to 4 months, we likely will be. Will there be awareness as we approach heating season about the dangers of electrical equipment that has been submerged in water? Will there be extra firefighters to deal with the increase in calls of electrical fires? Will people resort to space heaters that don't have furnaces?
So, again, I meet with Black Hills. I'm not part of the electrical side, but it is a common concern that we have in the natural gas side in relation to the appliances. If you had water on an appliance, I would say 6 to 12 inches above the bottom of the appliance, that's when it starts getting into the electrical portion of the appliance. Any water that may dry away, it is still going to leave a contaminant on those electrical appliance parts, and that is what corrodes over time. So if you got a water heater that was underwater and it came out and it was dry, the parts on the bottom side of that water heater still may be corroding and you won't know it. This is the same thing with your furnace, electrical, or natural gas. It is our recommendation that you get these appliances replaced. The biggest concern for us from a natural gas standpoint is if the electrical parts go out and if you have a standing pilot type furnace, all of a sudden that standing pilot goes out and then you're not going to have heat, and you can also create a different danger. Black Hills Energy has a 1-hour response time that we maintain for all gas leaks and emergencies. We are not bringing in extra people for that at this time. However, we do anticipate there's going to be a very large number of relights as we approach heating season. That's one of our biggest concerns, and as that may occur, we will look at bringing in extra people. Further, the other concern for that, especially with corroded and contaminated electrical parts, is that does leave the opportunity for CO. CO is the silent killer. Everybody, I'm sure, has heard about it. But if you have not updated your CO detectors, we would ask that you please do that as well. The corrosion on the inside of the pipes and on the venting in your home, if there was any standing water inside of that, or if the appliance is inefficient, it will cause leaking, not leaking, but corrosion of the metal on the vents, and that can then dump CO into your home, you may not know it. Upper Des Moines does have a program available for them. Black Hills has a program available to go through and do energy efficiency audits. These are things that can help you find some of those items if you do have them. But again, it is our recommendation that if you had water on your appliance, don't just trust that it's working now, because over time those appliances will go out, and as we all know, nothing ever happens in a timely manner. It'll be that day where it's 25 below zero and you have to have heat. So that's that side of that question. I do have one response. Earlier I said what it takes to get your natural gas back. A lot of people have lost the foundations, and so Black Hills went around and on all of the circle red X's, or the vast majority of those homes, we cut the service out of the street. If you need to have one of your services brought back, please reach out to our call center, and we'll get that scheduled with our construction team. Again, as the winter comes closer, it's starting to get cooler now. Our construction season typically runs through the end of October, possibly into November, depending on how the weather works. If we don't have that request prior to that time, we are not able to install gas lines in the frost. So we would ask that you reach out to us prior to that time if you're planning on getting a new service to the home. In terms of the fire department and that response, I'll turn that over to the city.
Do you want to take this?
Sure.
Okay, well, otherwise, I was just going to say, with regard to firefighters, I'm not aware that we've had any conversations at City Hall with regard to adding any firefighters as a result of this.
So this question came from Lee. Are you here, Lee? Is he here? All right. It's a good question. So the toughest part of the deliberation of whether to do waivers or not is the weighing out of the safety of people versus the speed at which to repair your life back to normal, right? The decision was made that if the homeowner is willing to bear the risk of trusting the electrician only, not having the city come verify it, that at that time we were comfortable with the homeowner assuming that risk. Fires aren't 100% preventable. They happen. They're horrible when they happen. Is there the increased probability that you could see more fires because of a flood disaster? The answer is yes. So statistically, there are more fires after a disaster for many reasons. Not immediately, but over time, things that were submerged, things that, to Heath's point, corrode over time, things fail. That could happen. We hope it does not. We don't have a plan to, as the mayor said, hire more staff, to prevent that. But the goal is to get back. The space heater question is a really good one. So a month ago, we visited with Suter and Midwest Mechanical and Christian Sheet Metal, different people on the EOC team. So the concern was, do we have enough time as a community to get enough furnaces back online before winter or cold season hits? And as we know, living up here, a lot of times even during the fair, right, you might kick the furnace on for a day, depending on the temperature you like to keep your house. For sure, by the middle to the end of October, most furnaces are running. So at that time, they felt that they were comfortable to be able to get through their workload before, let's say, hard winter, which we're going to classify as like mid-December to January, when space heaters won't work anymore to keep your pipes from not freezing. At that time, they were comfortable they could get through their workload. Each one of them independently said, you know, check back in early to mid-September and we'll see. So the plan is, if the feedback that we get in a couple weeks when we ask them again, if they say, no, we think there's a gap, because they felt by now they'd have a better educated answer versus, you know, 3 to 5 weeks after the disaster, how fast they can get through these installs. So if we do feel there's a gap, then we will put a plan in place to figure out coordinated from a community standpoint of how do we bring in more installers to get furnaces back online for people that are ready for furnaces. There's a couple challenges with that we'll work through, but I'd just like the public to know that that is on our radar, has been on our radar, we continue to monitor it. It is possible, you know, that there might be some addresses that we can't get to, but the goal is everybody that's ready for a furnace has a furnace when they need it. That's what we're trying to monitor.
All right, we have about 12 minutes left in this panel. We're going to try and get to as many questions as we can with the time remaining. I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but we're going to do our best. Next question, how are property taxes being calculated?
First, I'd like to start with that the property tax system is a very difficult system, even when things are fine. We know things are not fine. I want to leave with the understanding and knowing that the assessor's office is here to assist you and to answer any questions that you have in relationship to your property value. And with it being such a complicated system, we did draft up an FAQ that I believe you have all been given tonight. It is also on the county website, the county Facebook site, and also if you Google Iowa assessors and go to Clay County, it is also posted there on that front page. There are two components to the valuation process. The first one is being cost, and the second one is market. We are currently in the data collecting for the cost component. This is where we need you to assist us in letting us know what damage you have sustained with your properties. We cannot see all of it from the right of way, or we have started knocking on doors. We can't see it all from our perspective, so we do need your assistance in letting us know what damage you have sustained. That is a primary part to your valuation. The second component is the market. The market, we are reactive to the market. So we'll spend the next few months analyzing the sales to determine the market component of the valuation system. Some things that we have to look at is a home that had 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, that's now 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Is it worth as much as it was? The answer is no. But what does that look like? We aren't going to know the answer to that until we see the sales starting to come through. Is there going to be a stigma to living, you know, in a certain part of the community because of the flooding? Again, it will be the market that tells us that. So the other main component I want you to be aware of is that the Iowa tax system does work in arrears. The assessor's office is always working 18 months ahead of the tax system. So when you received your property tax statements this Monday, that was for value year 2023. Okay? So the year that the assessor's office is working on is value year 2025, taxes payable 26, 27. So we will collect this data, we will get it entered, we will look at the market data and determine what kind of reductions need to be added based on market. That's gonna probably come with pockets in the community. And then we have to have assessment notices out to the public by April 1st. Please, I can't stress enough, if you will also go to that same website, again, if you Google Iowa assessors, go to Clay County, there's a property worker card on there of your property. And you can see what characteristics we have for you. Now, when we send out assessment notices on April 1st, we will do our best to have that all out there. We depend on software companies to do that, but again, we will work our best at getting it out there as soon as possible. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact us. We can review your property record card with you as well. So if you are not satisfied with your valuation, I would really appreciate the opportunity to be given to the assessor's office to work through that with you. If you are not satisfied with the discussion from the assessor's office, you do have other appeal processes afforded to you, which I have outlined on the back of this application sheet, which also will come on your property assessment notices as well. And we have a local board of review that meets, and then you have a state appeal board that you can appeal to, and also district court. So again, I just would appreciate any opportunity to work with you on your values. We do have a lot of work ahead of us, and the sooner that we can visit with you, the sooner we will be able to determine our values.
We'll go ahead and take a few more minutes so that we can answer some more questions while we have so many people here. What happens to the piles of garbage outside that has not been picked up, especially if in recent days or weeks you had Samaritan's Purse come in after cleaning, and there's been more debris in yards after the pickup date? Where do we go from here with that?
So we call it impacted personal property. That's the first thing. Today, we asked the state of Iowa to extend the contract with the current contractor. So their contract had wound down about 10 days ago. We tried to handle it with local city staff, and I think maybe the mayor mentioned this before. So we're designed and wired to run basic services. And when you try to dump extra workload on top of that, sometimes that can work and sometimes it doesn't. And so we tried for about 10 days to have the sanitation department and the street department in tandem try to continue that work. And the workload is still too much to be able to handle locally. So we sent the request to the state of Iowa yesterday. They didn't think it would be a problem to extend the current contractor. It's not going to look like it did before from like a debris pile standpoint. We're not going to start debris piles and impact personal property piles again. Right away, take it to the right away, they'll pick it up, they'll either go to the transfer station or directly to the landfill in Greenwich. So that's the plan from now moving forward. How many cases are there? So Jessica in the back there, she's in daily contact with Samaritan's Purse and the other crisis cleanup, right? Those called, yeah. So we get daily case numbers, how many are still left. You know, between the two organizations, I'm gonna spitball here, guess 200 or so total cases still out there. Of those cases, there's a mix of mold mitigation, basement clean out. So let's round that down to 100. You know, they can get, I don't know, 10 to 20 a day maybe, depending on the load. So we anticipate, you know, another month, maybe month and a half of property cleanups. But part of why in the last 2 weeks the impacted property has sat longer in front of houses is because we were experimenting, trying to figure out if we could just handle it locally. We can't. So we're going to have the state contractor continue to do that to try to get that property picked up as fast as possible. So hopefully moving forward from today is the fast possible. Oh yeah, we still continue to not bill. If you have impacted flood property and you go out there, you know, through the transfer station, we're still in a no bill mode for that. So you just have to tell them at the window, this is flood property damage. Then you should not get charged.
Okay. In the last recent weeks, there have been some benefit concerts for the community of Spencer. There was one at Arnold's Park, there was one this past weekend in Edinburgh. This person is asking, who is in charge of those funds and the money that was raised from those benefit concerts, where are they going? And how can we get on that list?
Great question. So first, I would like to say that I can't thank our neighbors to the north and east especially enough. Okoboji Community Schools, they were our lifeline from day one. And it's just been amazing. So Arnold's Park, for example, that was an effort that local businesses got on, as well as other donors, people who contributed, I think it's safe to say coast to coast. Side note, what we are doing actually at the chamber is we are going to be setting up a map of the United States and putting a pin wherever we've gotten a donation, so we can show just community-wide, and we'll try to get that out in other channels other than social media as well. But we want to recognize that because, like I said, we've had donations from $10 to just over $60,000. So the $60,000 that came in from the Arnold's Park fundraiser into the Lake County, into the Spencer Chamber Foundation. Those funds are being used then for individuals and for businesses as well. Same thing for the fundraiser that was just this past weekend that Brad Morgan did in Emmitsburg. He's been great. I talked to him actually yesterday on the phone, or Monday on the phone. We raised about $2,100 through that. They also did an adopt a family, or adopted one or two families, so they had silent auction items, or actually raffle items, and so funds raised through the raffle. They being that family, decided that they were going to adopt a family. And then the other contributions also came to the Spencer Chamber Foundation. Again, that will be pulled out and put into the general just disaster recovery fund for businesses and residents. Additionally, tonight actually, Westo and Okoboji Foundation and Modern Women of America, the Adam Gress, as an advisor, they are doing an event called On Us tonight. Actually, it's been all day today, but primarily from 6 to 8. So those proceeds will also be coming to the Chamber Foundation and also used in the same manner. I'll also mention Terry Bachelet has just been an amazing partner with the Clay County Community Foundation. So between she and I, we meet at least weekly, or talk at least weekly, so that it's very clear in that who we're able to assist, and also that she and I are tracking down every potential corporation, foundation that potentially would help fund any recovery efforts. So she's been a fantastic partner in this, and I can't thank her enough. So we are going to try to help as many people as possible.
I won't speak on Terry's behalf, but she's at that fundraiser tonight. And just so you know, they're trying to, along with Sharif, it has been a great partnership between the Clay County Community Foundation and the Chamber. So I won't speak for Terry, but she did say that she appreciates the generous contributions of the local donors. There's been many, and there's also been some national donors. And she's trying to put that up on Facebook pages to let folks know how much people care about Clay County. You should also know that in this room, how that money gets allocated, I am authorized to say this by her. So local community members sit on the board of the Clay County Community Foundation to decide where those funds from the disaster relief funds go to. So it's local folks making the decision about what's the highest priorities and where those funds get allocated. So it's not somebody else deciding, it's people that live and work right here in our community that allocate those funds. And I won't call them out by name, but there's some of those people in the room here tonight. So if you see them, thank them for what they're doing with that foundation. Thank you.
I'll add to that just briefly. Same thing, so we have a chamber board. It's a 9-member board, and we also have a foundation board. It's a 5-member board. The grant review committee for the Chamber Foundation has been made up of 5 people. Also, all community members. And I'll add our largest individual gift that we've received to date was $50,000. And again, the generosity is incredible. There's definitely people that I know that have donated. from alumni and recent alumni from the high school, and so it's pretty heartwarming to see that, especially, you know, I would say young people that are maybe only a year or 2 years into their career, and so it's just been really incredible. Again, from New York to Vermont to California to people who really write these amazing little notes that just say, I lived in Spencer in, you know, 1963, and I just remember the time that I had there, and a $25 check or whatever. So it's just been really incredible. So once we have that map ready, we'll make sure and share that as best as possible with the community as well.
One real benefit to a lot of people, there were portable showers in different places for people to use. The question is will P&S showers be allowed to continue providing showers to those in need and for the FEMA camper folks after today?
Happy to answer that question. So I think there was some confusion publicly about free showers. So P&S, is anybody from P&S here? Okay. So P&S was not told to cease and desist and stop giving showers. Okay. So they were here for the Red Power Roundup. The disaster occurred. Part of the emergency operation command asked them if they would be gracious enough to stay and provide showers. You know, the water plant went out, or the sewer plant went offline. You know, cease and desist on going to the bathroom in your property, no showers, no nothing, right? So part of the response was how do we get showers available for people? So P&S was able to meet that need. So as time went forward, we monitored how many people are using it. So after 5 weeks or so, 6 weeks I would say, we checked in with P&S, and the estimate was that they don't keep daily I don't want to speak for them, this is our conversations. So roughly anywhere from 10 to 20 people a day are taking showers. So the city of Spencer from day one paid by the hour to have those showers in place. So if you would like to, I mean, it's public record, you can look at our council meetings and see how much money is paid out to them, and I'm happy to have a one-off conversation if you'd like to have that. So only the first handful of weeks when the sewer plant was offline is the amount of time that FEMA will reimburse for showers to be paid. And so 100% of that bill was picked up by the city of Spencer past that. So we made sure that there were different areas where showers were available. If, you know, P&S decided not to continue after we told them we're not going to pay any more for the free showers. There are options available. The chamber was gracious enough to step in and be the fiscal agent to provide, you know, community showers. So I would like to thank them. They're great people. It's a great service. There's a lot of people that got showers out of them. The city didn't tell them to stop because we don't like free showers or we don't like P&S or it's not that. We have to be fiscally responsible for our funds, and as we talked about before, we're trying to make sure that we direct the resources to the maximum amount of benefit across the community. And at that time, we just felt as a leadership team that we were no longer the right fiscal agent to continue that service. And so that's the story of free showers. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
We have just a few more questions we'll address, and then there will be time if anybody wants to have one-on-one time with the folks at the back tables, or if anybody has some individual questions for anybody on the panel here yet tonight. This next question, do we need a pressure check when getting Black Hills to turn on gas? And how will we know if our water meter stops working?
Well, I don't know how your water meter is gonna get worse, that's a silly question. But the Black Hills policy, we require a working appliance, as I stated earlier. And then we do what's called a shut-in test to make sure that the piping is safe. And what the intent of that is, the shut-in test, we mark it on the meter, and if the meter spins, while everything's off, then you have a leak somewhere on your piping hub inside. And that's the intent of the shut-in or pressure test as was asked. Yes, on every new install or every relight, we will require a shut-in test. And we work with the plumbers pretty close on what is required for that. One of the questions that's come up in the past is what happens if I install my own water heater and I want you to come out and do a relight? Good, bad, or indifferent, our policy is that you have to be a certified plumber in order to do that. So we will require you to get a plumber that can come out and testify that this is a good install. So even if you install your own appliance, we do require somebody with a plumbing license to come out and take a look at that.
I would like to provide just a little bit more information on the shower since the Chamber Foundation decided about a week ago to help with that. So we will be issuing a update tomorrow, and it'll be, through our media partners throughout the community on that.
Will there be a new flood zone issued where there wasn't one before?
Unknown, so here's how the flood stuff works. So the federal government issues where the floodplain lines were. What I can tell you is it's a very exhaustive process, it's a very expensive process. They do not update them very often. They were recently updated, so in 18, I believe it was 2018, the new map came out through some federal legislation, and it dealt with local runoff as well as river systems. Then there was about a year and a half long appeal process, and then there was about a year-long adoption process, and then the new floodplain maps went into it. I was looking at the builders here. I think the new floodplain, Adam, what did the flood? 2021. So 2021, so it took 3 years for those new lines to get drawn. And we've received no indication from the federal government that they're gonna redo those. We're not in control of that. Is my disclaimer on that as well, but if we do find out that there's legislation in the works or they want to do that, the state of Iowa doesn't control them. The state of Iowa is the agent that administers it through the federal government. So if we hear anything, the moment we would hear, we would let the public know.
And we'll do one more question. What is the city doing about reconciling the cost of waste and materials for those who will be demoing their homes?
I'm guessing the question might stem from the difference between asbestos pricing and non-asbestos pricing when it relates to home demos. So we're in the process of trying to figure that out. We made a recommendation to the council. The short version is there's a base rate to take house demolition material to the landfill. Then there's also an asbestos rate. There's different processes that have to happen at the landfill if it has asbestos or if it's unknownly treated as asbestos. So there has to be a hole dug immediately, it's put in there, covered, because you don't want the asbestos fire to be airborne. So the recommendation that Public Works Director made to the council last meeting, was it committee of the whole council? Was it committee of the whole? Committee of the whole,
Yeah.
committee of the whole, okay. So the rate was significantly higher, more than double for asbestos than it was just general construction. Mark's recommendation was to go $15 over what the normal rate is. So don't quote me on the rates. I think it was mid-60s per ton on normal house disposal, and on asbestos house disposal, it was 152 or so, somewhere in the 150s. So the recommendation to the council was to go $15 over what the regular price is if there's no asbestos mitigation certificate that comes with the material. You have to assume and treat it as asbestos. And that's an EPA regulation. If the EPA shows up and audits us and, we didn't know, we didn't treat it that way, there's fines, of course, the EPA. So that's where we're at in the process. Here's what I would tell you. In my former life, I spent a little time on the dais. So the rates are set by the city council for all city homes. So, if you have a strong opinion on this, the right pathway to go is to talk to the representatives that represent you and voice your concerns, and then they can certainly have a discussion and work with staff on if we want to change those. So that's where that sits.
All right, thank you. I can tell this is a good time to wrap it up. The one dog we have is getting anxious. We'd like to thank everyone for coming. We appreciate your patience. Thank you for submitting some very well-needed questions, and I hope that this was able to provide some answers and clarification. A special thank you to the Clay County Fair for opening their doors here at the Event Center. It's much appreciated. SMU is taking this and will be playing back on SMU here at a later date. From here, I'm going to hand it over to the mayor for some closing comments. Afterwards, you're all welcome. If you want to have some individual conversations with anybody up here or in the back, you have time to do so. Mayor?
Yeah, I would like to thank everyone again for coming out tonight. I'd like to thank the panel. And I also, special thanks to Kevin for answering the call when he was needed. And now, I'm not going to call Kevin the master of disaster, but he has certainly become an expert in government programs and acronyms and everything. And one of the things that when we asked Kevin to come on board is that we needed help with dealing with the various government entities that were coming at us fast and furiously in those first days after the flood. And I think that you can see that he's done a nice job with regard to that. But I would like to, again, express my appreciation for everyone coming out tonight, for the questions, for the panelists. And again, if you have questions for anyone in the back of the room, please feel free to stop by and ask them. And I think they would be able to answer any questions that you might have. Again, thank you very much.